that conversation with them. And in the event where they were moving, not because they bought a new property, but because of finding a slight as a good tenant. I see Semi Mahlatse commenting on Facebook saying, but I noticed a trend that many things are really going up, including some policies.
As well as landlords offloading properties in the coming months because of this exact problem, which is going to present a further opportunity for home buyers in the market because there's going to be high level of stock, lower prices, but landlords are then going to achieve lower prices on their property. So we're in this really unfortunate market for a lot of people where there's lots of stock on the market at the moment. Rental levels are down, costs are certainly up, although your mortgage payments are down. But then there's a high level of vacancy that we haven't seen in a long time. So from my point of view, and in conversations I've had with investors and part of our team, is this is probably the riskiest environment I've ever seen personally for a landlord in a long time, because they are exposed to all the elements that provide risk in property investment, but they're actually accentuated by our economic situation as well as obviously the pandemic.
We're taking more of your questions and comments here on the Private Property Podcast. We are talking about the changing nature from tenants moving from being tenants to being homeowners, and the implications that this has on landlords and the ways that landlords are navigating this, but also the way that tenants who are now about to become homeowners are increasingly navigating it. And Grant, you mentioned something that I think is also so important to note, especially for the active investors who may have bought poorly, that you might find that if you sort of sit down and run your numbers effectively, it may be worth offloading that particular asset than trying to hold on to it. So do make sure that you don't sort of, put away the idea or disregard the idea of potentially loading off an asset, because sometimes it may have happened that perhaps you bought it a couple of years ago, you thought you bought well, given where the market was a couple of years ago, the levies were perhaps relatively low, and perhaps the rental was relatively high, but as the years essentially progressed, the rental hasn't escalated at the rate that you may have wanted it to escalate, and all the other associated costs have been sort of rising. You need to be able to go to the drawing board and assess whether it's worth you holding on to that asset. Because I think, Grant, one of the things that I'm finding is there are a number of investors that I've had conversations with who are recognizing how certain properties in their portfolios are just bleeding their portfolios and are now looking at offloading those specific ones because of the negative effects those particular assets are having on their overall portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. So this portfolio effect idea, this robbing Peter to pay Paul idea, was always something that was advocated by people generally selling properties and generally selling investment properties. But it's not a business, not a working and sustainable business model, particularly where you're robbing Peter and Peter's no longer making money anymore. Now you've got no one to cover anybody in that situation. So you can't insure against a bad idea. You can't insure against a bad business idea. It's just, what I would suggest is in this situation, look at the worst performing assets, get rid of them, take the loss if there is a loss right now, and at least live to fight another day. The problem is if you get deeper and deeper into a hole and you end up getting a bad financial record or credit record, you're going to be unable to buy again in the future. So rather maintain your credit record right now, get rid of the property, take the bloody nose, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs, investors know about over the last 18 months, and at least walk away being able to wipe away the blood and play again another day.
We've got a comment as well as a question coming through from Facebook. Umatha Shingange asking, maybe at the rate that things are going, one must just focus on the current portfolio instead of adding more. My old age question stands, should we dive in or wait for the economy to stabilize? And that's the big one, right, Grant? A lot of investors want to know, should they buy or should they rather wait and assess how things are going to be?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a really difficult decision to make right now. If I said to you, go and buy, you're going to go rush off and buy and potentially dig yourself a hole. If I say hold off, then you're going to miss all the bargains that are out there and look back 2 years' time and come hunting for me. So it's one of the situations you need to look at each specific situation, each property that's available to you and assess the risks individually, and consider this, that when people talk about the property market, on the news and in forums, they're generally talking about the South African property market. The problem is it doesn't take into account suburbs, areas, streets, neighborhoods that you need to consider when you are generally looking at a specific property. So look at your area, look at your neighborhood, look at the streets, see what the demand is, assess the risk, look at the price of the property you're buying, and make a decision based on all the fundamentals based on that property and the immediate economy around it.
Grant, before I let you go, any final tips for our viewers at home, especially the lands, when it comes to sort of best thinking through, but also navigating their tenants potentially, becoming homeowners themselves, or perhaps even some of them opting to go for a slightly cheaper rental property during this market?
Yeah, so I think, everybody needs to sort of buckle down at the moment. We're not out of the woods yet. So in the decisions you're making, they need to be financial and not emotional. So if you're looking to buy a property, if you're looking to rent a property out, if you're getting desperate to find a tenant, take a step back, take a deep breath, and then make a decision based on or not based on emotion, but rather based on fact and information that you have at hand. It's important whether you're buying a home at the moment, looking to downgrade your rental, or looking to fill your property with a tenant. Just try and take a step away from the emotion, I think, is the biggest thing we can do at the moment.
And Grant, that's a great place to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Summer.
And that is Grant Smear, who's a director at Epic South Africa. To all the landlords, as Grant says, buckle up and make sure that you do continuous assessment of your portfolio. Because one of the things that you do not want to do is, have a property that is potentially weighing your portfolio down, or worse, as Martha has pointed out, where you probably buy and it may not necessarily be the best time to buy. You sort of buy into there's historically low interest rates, buy, but make sure that in the event where you do decide to buy, that you've run all your numbers in the most prudent way possible. So rather underestimate what you think your yield is going to be, as opposed to, assuming that you will reach sort of negative or double-digit yield. And be as prudent as possible, because we still haven't quite gotten out of the red in as far as the state of the economy because of the effects of COVID-19. So do make sure that you play it on the safe side. And even if you have a bullish streak about you, I think you do want to err on the side of caution as much as possible. Well, that's it for me, Zamantungwa, and the rest of the Private Property Podcast team this Monday evening. It has been a pleasure to be with all of you. We'll be back on your screens tomorrow at 7 p.m. Until then, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.
Hi, I'm Nicoline Terblanche and I'm part of the SA Women's Hockey team. And I'm the technical director of Tax Hockey. And I'm also the assistant coach for the first team ladies. I moved to Ferry Glen about 5 years ago. Ferry Glen is a really safe place and the people are really kind. Some of my friends live very close by in suburbs like Equestria and Olympus. In the morning I will wake up, make myself a cup of coffee, go for a jog in the Fairy Glen Nature Reserve or even just in the neighborhood. It's safe, quiet, and the environment is really nice. I love Fairy Glen because I'm near the city but I'm not in the city. I like to go to Pretoria Country Club to clear my mind, on my own, to relax and just to enjoy a round of golf. In Pretoria East we really have nice places to visit like Mainland Mall and Brooklyn Mall that is really close by. There are also a lot of top schools in the area like Pretoria Boys and Hoërskool Menlo Park. One of the most beautiful places to see the whole of Pretoria is the Fort Kapperkop viewpoint. And that's my neighborhood.